So I hope everybody is good. Few hours left until your eventual exam, whether you're giving it at the AM or PM. So the idea was that we just sit together and try to understand how to ensure that tomorrow turns out to be a productive session when you're giving the paper. And that is really important. So, but before I begin, it's really important to understand that whatever you guys are doing in terms of studying for the ATP paper, make sure that you conclude at least 8 to 9 hours before the paper is finished. What does that mean? That means that please ensure that you get to the rest, because ATP is not that much of recalling of information as it is about reading the information on the paper and answering questions according to it, most of the answers of which are already in there, you know, like the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. And the idea is basically just going to take a few minutes of your time here, and we're going to just really quickly go over the aspects. So one size does not fit all, as you can understand, when it comes to preparation. So I need you guys to be really, rested up. The reason for that is because, again, there are some aspects of the syllabus that will be asked, but some aspects of the syllabus will not be asked at all, right? And bear in mind that everybody who's listening right now, whether you're in IGCSE or you're in 5090, that is your O-levels, in any case, what you have is that you've all given your respective theory paper. And by theory paper, of course, I'm referring to the P2, if it's 5090 that we're talking about, or if we're referring to IGCSE with 0690. Now, again, very quickly, I know that you've probably been through this before, but just to try to understand that whenever you're going to read through the question, make sure that you are able to differentiate between this word here. I hope you guys can share the screen, can see the screen in front of yourself. The word describe, the word explain. This is really important to be able to differentiate. Describe is what, right? So for example, you are asked to describe a graph. Then you're asked to describe the trend of a graph at the most. That if, for example, the rate of enzyme activity increases when the temperature increases, right? Or it's going to ask you related to what is the table. So the table value. So maybe the table values are also following a particular trend. So that's basically it. So for example, if water is possibly entering a potato tissue by the process of osmosis, right? That entry of the water into potato tissue, making the potato tissue turgid. So the entry of water into the potato tissue is the description. The fact that that is osmosis and the fact that is happening down a water potential gradient is the explanation. So describe is the what, explain is the how. So be sure to differentiate, and I'm sure you've been doing that in the previous exam as well. Then there's another very common word that is starting to be really used by CIE, whether it's O-levels, IGCSE, or A-levels, and that is suggest. So it says suggest that you need to apply your knowledge to novel scenarios, right? And one of my students actually said this. He said this, that, he was giving one of his papers, and obviously that was not actually an O-level paper, but it was an A-level paper. But having said that, they're all linked, isn't it? Next year, inshallah, for those who are taking biology, will be appearing for their AS as well. So like they asked the word suggest so many times that, he started getting, a bit uptight about it, that we're done. So point is, look at it from the positive point of view. Suggest there's no one correct answer, which means that if you know your syllabus and you know what is asked in the exam in that particular period of time, you should be able to answer your question. You just need to use your scientific acumen, okay, whatever it is. The word evaluate is going to be really important as well going forward. And if usually it's the importance of something. And remember, if they ask you to evaluate something, always give both the positives and the negatives of it. I'll explain to you in a bit what that means. So that's basically some of the main command words that obviously everybody needs to know about. Obviously, I'm not going to waste time in telling about what are the things that are no longer part of the syllabus. For those who were with me in the YouTube video, we did that as well. But here, I would basically talk about the things which are part of your syllabus or aspects, if you will, of the syllabus that can be tested. So you notice that what I'm actually sharing with you is merely the, the syllabus copy. Now, you're probably looking that it's a 0610 syllabus copy and not the 5090 copy, but believe you me, there is no difference. It's more or less the same thing, okay? So it's not like that I'm actually selling someone short here. So the thing is that if you are looking at the screen, you're looking at the fact that you should be able to not just write amount anymore whenever you're describing what it is that you need to take in terms of the experimental apparatus. You need to see that when you are looking for gases and liquids, you have to write volume, not amount anymore. When you're looking at something that's solid in nature, such as powder or such as crystals, right? Or anything of that sort, then you're looking at masses. Temperatures, remember, from a practical perspective, you obviously need what? For volume, as you know, you are going to use, if it's something that's small, you're going to use a low volume, you're going to use a syringe, whether it's of a gas or liquid, and something that is of a higher volume, that you're probably going to use a measuring cylinder. So you should be able to know which particular instrument it is that you use. For masses, of course, you're probably going to use a weighing scale. For temperatures, you're going to use a lab thermometer. And bear in mind, the lab thermometer is going to be somewhere between -10 to 110 degrees Celsius. Times, obviously, you'll be getting stopwatch for the purpose, and that will be giving you the time in seconds, right? Lengths, of course, for that you'll have the ruler, and the unit you'll be using most of the time, millimeter, or sometimes if it's a small cellular structure, it could be micrometers as well. And bear in mind that 1 millimeter is equal to 1,000 micrometer, which means that 1 centimeter, if that's what you're doing it, is 10,000 micrometer. So be very careful that, especially when you're doing the questions related to magnification, by the way, and this is the formula, make sure that the image size or the actual size that you're looking at, you need to ensure that before you apply the formula, you need to ensure that the unit is absolutely the same. All right. Then, of course, you'll be test on diffusion osmosis. The very common thing for use for diffusion is you often get to use, so for example, the potato is often used for the purpose of osmosis questions, whereby the potato length through the process of osmosis can enter the water can enter into the potato tissue, or it could even be sucrose solution that enters or exits. So obviously, your information regarding diffusion osmosis, just go over it once so that you're absolutely sure about it. Food tests are all important, and food tests need to be, whether you like it or not, they need to be rote learned. If you were lucky enough during your classes that your teacher took you to the lab, that's great. But for the moment, the only thing you have is to learn. So remember that when it comes to the food test, you got the Benedict's test. And it's equally important that you know the original color of the solution, that's blue. And what will the color change to? So I always tell the students to remember this particular trick is to remember the 7 colors of the rainbow. So Roig Biv, or you can go for the opposite, that's Vib Gyor, right? And blue being the starting one, that means that if blue has to change color and the Benedict solution has to show a positive color, or rather a positive result, then it's supposed to be green, yellow, orange, or red. In terms of the level at which it's supposed to be. So green is supposed to be the trace amounts, yellow is supposed to be moderate, orange more than that, and red even more than that. Okay. Now, so this is basically what it is. And remember that Benedict's test is for reducing sugars only. It is not for non-reducing sugar. And remember that the non-reducing sugar is sucrose. So for sucrose, the typical Benedict's test will not stand. For sucrose, you need to, use a different kind of, one. Obviously, Benedict's solution will still be used for that process, but of course, you'll probably be tested with it regarding, in AS as well. So that's for food test in Benedict's solution. That's for reducing sugars. Then you've got the Biodit test. And remember this, B for Biodit, which means blue in color. And this is one for protein. So it's a protein test. And the color that will change to is purple. So B for Biodit, B for blue, P for protein, and P for purple. Now, that purple could either be a mauve or lilac or violet. Take your fancy, whatever you like to say. And remember that Benedict's test is the only test, by the way, that is going to involve any kind of heating. And when we talk about heating, also remember that it is acceptable that when you say that the Benedict solution will be, or rather the test solution, Benedict solution will be heated, it is acceptable to write any timeline between 2 minutes to 10 minutes. Okay. Obviously, it also depends on the temperature. So Benedict says the temperature, any acceptable temperature, usually ranges between 80 degrees Celsius to 100 degrees Celsius. Okay, so that's basically for Benedict's test. For Biot test, remember there is no heating involved. No heating involved at all, right? Then we've got the third test, which is the starch identification test. Starch identification test, remember, once again, starts with the color of the iodine. And the iodine color, remember, is supposed to be a brown. And from the brown, as you all know, it's supposed to turn either blue or black. Please do not write bluish black or blackish blue. That doesn't give a good impression. Just write dark blue if you feel that it is, not just black or not just blue. That's basically it. And then, of course, for the next one, you've got the test for lipids. And the test for lipids is the EE test. EE stands for ethanol emulsion test. And the ethanol emulsion test involves putting the lipid solution or putting the lipid volume into an equal volume of ethanol first and allow them to mix. No need to heat, allow them to mix. If they mix, they're most likely going to cause a clear solution. And remember, the lipids are supposed to form a clear solution when they mix with ethanol because they are miscible. After that, the next step is to this lipid plus ethanol mixture. What do you add? You add an equal volume of water. You add an equal volume of water. And of course, what you get eventually is an emulsion, which is white in color, which shows that the lipid did not dissolve properly into the water. So this is some aspect of it. So this is regarding both 5090 and 0610. The extra one, so again, obviously what's common to both is the Benedict's test, the Biot test, the starch test, the lipid test. The fifth one, which is specific to 0610, that is the IGCSE, and that is going to be the DC-PIP test, which is the test for the testing of vitamin C solution. So that means that if any test solution, if this is your test solution, has vitamin C, so that could be 1 cm cubed, for example, you can add an equal volume of the DC-PIP solution. So it's kind of blue colored dye, and that means that too will have an originally blue color. However, the color will change colorless, or it will basically decolorize. So maybe even if it doesn't change absolutely colorless, it probably loses its blue color really quickly. So the more vitamin C there will be, the more decolorization there will be. And bear in mind that whenever you're gonna design an investigation where you're asking you to do the food test, please look at what is the test's object or the test substance. If the test substance happens to be already a liquid, then that's okay. Just go on with the test. You got to add it to the test tube, right? But if the test substance is a solidified state, for example, they're asking you to test for the amount of vitamin C in an apple, then the first thing you need to do is you need a mechanism to crush the apple, because you can't just pour the vitamins, the DC-PIP solution on the apple and expect the chemical reaction to occur. You want the chemical reaction to occur. For that, you need a higher surface area to volume ratio. To ensure a higher surface area to volume ratio, the apple needs to be crushed. Volume ratio will be higher at B. So it'll be higher in B. However, with A, it's going to be lower. Which means what? Which means that there's a good chance that when something has to diffuse, it will take a longer time for it to diffuse through this cube from all four sides. Right? And it's going to take slightly easier for this cube to enter from all four sides on this end. So that's basically the scenario. So again, diffusion could be asked from that perspective as well. Remember, surface area to volume ratio is smaller substances. If it's supposed to be large, and surface area to volume ratio being lower means it's supposed to be a larger substance or maybe a larger cube, if you will. All right. So this is basically regarding it. Then regarding pH, for example, everybody knows the specific pH that certain enzymes work best at. And in your syllabus, remember that most of all the enzymes work best at a slightly alkaline pH. Talking about the pH here, slightly alkaline pH. I'm basically combining these two things now. Slightly alkaline pH, isn't it? So they're ranging from 7 to 9, for example. The only one that works in an acidic pH in reality is which one? Is the pepsin. It's the only protease that breaks down proteins into peptides. So keep that in mind. However, there's also a scenario where you probably sometimes have to mention